Okay, well, we are going to get started. So welcome everyone to the final session of the 2022 WIC Wanderlust series. We're so happy you've all joined us tonight. It's a great way to spend a rainy Minnesota evening, since you can't work on your boat or anything. So just a few housekeeping items before we get started. We are recording the session tonight, and we will share the link to the recording on YouTube once it's uploaded by our usual channels. So we'll send notifications and the WIC Weathermark on Facebook and an email to the folks who registered for the event tonight. We have enabled the live transcription for the session tonight. If you want to turn it off, simply click on the icon that says more with the 3 stacked dots on your Zoom ribbon, and then click hide subtitles. And you can turn them back on again if you want in the same way. There will be a Q&A session at the end of the program, so please hold all live questions to the end, but you can feel free to put questions in the chat at any time during the session. The membership committee folks will do our best to read them all during the Q&A time, but if you think we've missed a question, please feel free to repeat them at the end, or you can just unmute yourself when we're in the Q&A time and ask your questions live as well. During the session, we will keep your videos and mics turned off, and we'll keep them off until the Q&A time at the end. And if you forget or turn yours on somehow, we will turn them off for you. So anyway, without further ado, I'd like you to sit back and enjoy tonight's presentation by Mike Euler, Zen and the Art of Boat Maintenance, or How One Sailor Became a Liveaboard. Take it away, Mike.
Okay. Is this working? Can you see me?
We can.
Yes. Okay. Excellent. Welcome everybody. I'm Mike. This title, Zen and the Art of Boat Maintenance, is it's from one of my favorite books, Zen and the Art of Motorcycle Maintenance. And I believe Sierig, who's the author of that, got that from something else. So it's like a joke with 3 stages. But I'll have we're going to go through some stuff today. It's all from my experience. All the opinions are mine, which means they're awesome, but your mileage may vary. So I want to point out, and when we go through these slides, there are not very many of them, the pictures, because some of them have some special meaning for me. So over on the right on this picture here, you can see kind of a church in the background, and that's taken from my boat Sea Panda. So that's Jackson Square from the Mississippi River in New Orleans. So you have to you have to transit the river to make it through there from the Harvey Lock to the Industrial Lock, and the river runs sometimes about 6 knots, and Sea Panda can do about 5 knots with their engine. So if you miss the Industrial Lock, it's 110 miles to the mouth of the river. So I was pretty nervous at that spot right there. So if you ever get a chance to do the ICW through Louisiana, it's an experience, but that's the part where it's kind of a puckering experience. Let's see, in the middle, down at the bottom, that's Fort Sumter in Charleston. That was one of my goals when I started this out, was to go to Fort Sumter. Actually saw a bunch of forts along the way.
Hey, Mike. Oh, Mike,
yes.
can you maybe move your phone or your mic a little closer to you? You're a little bit quiet.
Okay. I am using headphones, so I'm going to just talk louder. How's that?
Oh, perfect. Thank you.
All right. So in the middle at the top, that's I don't know if you can see it, but that's somebody's dream yacht. That was in Fernandina Beach. Looks like maybe it's a Hobie 16 with one of those fold out chairs that also kind of makes into like a little camping. It's got a little tent on the top. He looked pretty beat up, but there's people out there sailing all kinds of stuff. Anyway, let's go to the next slide, please. Okay, this is me. I've been sailing since 2014. I started sailing with Wayzata Yacht Club. I'd not sailed a bit before, and I got the bug. And so that's what led to all this. That picture is taken in Black Point in the Exumas, in the Bahamas. If you want a copy of this presentation, you can email membership@wyc.org, and they will send you a copy of the presentation. Anything that I missed or I talked too fast or something like that, you can go through that. Let's go next slide. All right, so this is what I've prepared, but I'm really looking forward to the Q&A at the end. So scribble down your questions or try to remember them or make them up on the spot. It's okay. That picture is sailing in the Exumas in the Bahamas. One of the greatest things about the Bahamas is just the sailing. It's clear water. It's about most days 15 knots somewhere on a reach, and mostly clear skies and flat water. Just beautiful. Anyway, so we're going to talk about what I did and why. We'll talk about the factors that might stop you. We'll talk about the boat a little bit versus other boats. Probably the thing that I wanted to see most when I started this was people's financial situation. Like, how did they pull this off financially? So I'm going to share what I have about that. I've got a slide on ocean-going skills lake sailors need. And a lot of lake sailors have these skills, but not all did, and including me. So we'll talk about that. Talk about what broke, because that's always fun. Highlights, and then we'll do a Q&A. Okay, next slide, please. Okay, so what did I do? So I left Minnesota and my job. I had been looking at boats, and my plan was to maybe move somewhere closer to the shore and buy a boat and continue to work my job, and kind of ease into this. But some stuff happened, and I had an opportunity, and so I bought a Tartan 34-2 in Kemah, Texas. The 34-2 is the 2-meter fin keel version, 2-meter deep fin keel version. I motored from the ICW from Galveston to New Orleans. The reason I did that was because I don't have radar, and offshore in the Texas area and the Louisiana area, the oil field stuff is just crazy. Once you get out to 60 fathoms, it's all lit up because it's expensive to put stuff out there. But inside of 60 fathoms in the shallows where they were wildcatting back in the day, I mean, they're just pipes sticking up and unmarked everything. So yeah, so I took the ICW and I had a great time, and that's a whole nother story. And so I sailed the Gulf and then the Keys in 2021. And then if you see that picture to the right, that's my Navionics, and I don't know why it doesn't show the Gulf. But those are all those little orange pumpkins are all places that I anchored in the last year and a half, something like that. So went all the way up to North Carolina and then back down to the Bahamas. Let's see, in January I crossed over to Bimini. I went down to the Exumas, met a bunch of people, went down to the Exumas, came back up to Eleuthera, and then the Abacos, and then back over. And I've just I'm in Brunswick, Georgia right now, and I just got here today. Beautiful sail today. So why I had the opportunity, I was influenced, like a lot of people, by the video bloggers, you know, the Delos and La Vagabond and Uma, they're all an influence on me and a lot of people. Uh, and you know, you do actually run into these folks when you're out cruising. The cruising community goes to the same places and is kind of small. So yeah, I passed Delos as they were going down the Keys. I came up and like, hey, that's an AML 50. Oh, that's that AML 50. Okay. So yeah, so they were an influence. It was a way to declutter and simplify my life, and that appeals to a lot of the ethics that I try to live by, um, and those convictions. To move on to a 34-foot boat means that you can't have a lot of stuff, you know. So I have what I have on the boat, and I have a 5x5 storage shed in Texas that I need to go and move. So the route choice was kind of because I see myself as a coastal cruiser and not an ocean crosser. I enjoy coastal cruising. I don't mind being offshore, but it's not my thing. It doesn't bring me a lot of joy. But I do like seeing things along the coast, and so that's kind of why I kind of picked a route. I picked up hints from guides sometimes, Navionics, the Active Captain, and then a lot of other cruisers. You know, I had planned, for instance, to go to the Abacos for the Bahamas because I thought, well, that's going to be like easy for me. But cruisers talked me into it. They said, no, you're solo sailing, so you should go the shortest distance for the crossings. You should go to Bimini. And once I got to Bimini, they said, oh, no. You go as far south and as far east as you possibly can at first, and then you back through that. And you know what? They're right. That's absolutely the way to do it. So, yeah, I really enjoyed that. Okay, next slide, please. What will stop you? So, this is the things that I saw stop people, actually, for the most part. And so, some of this is a little sensitive, but the first one is that if there are people in your life that aren't 100% into the dream of moving on to a sailboat and just like going out and exploring, that's not going to work out well for you. I saw that happen to friends, as you can imagine. So the next one that I didn't think about and is a big deal right now is insurance. When I started this, when I bought my boat, I could only get insured through Progressive. And because at the time in 2020, they would kind of insure just about anybody. But Progressive would not let you live aboard. And they had some limits about how far you could go offshore. It was fairly constrictive. So, you know, I had to have an apartment and an address. I know there are several ways to get around that, but if you have a claim and they find out you don't have an actual address, they're going to deny your claim. They're looking for a way to deny your claim all the time. So, so I had an apartment for that first year in Texas, which was good because I had 6 months where I needed to get the boat in the shape that I wanted it. And then I got on Geico, and a lot of the restrictions, I didn't have hardly any restrictions at all. But this last fall, Geico sends me a message that says they've dropped my agent and therefore me, and I needed to find other insurance. So that was a scramble. I ended up still staying with Geico. and getting a rider so I could go to the Bahamas and actually lowering the cost that I was paying. So it worked out well for me, but it doesn't always work out. I have two sets of friends down in the Bahamas who couldn't go any further south than Georgetown because of their um, insurance restrictions. And one of them is a long time racer. Races the Beneteau 36.7 and the the Viper. He's in North Carolina. He's been sailing forever, and they just said, well, because he didn't have the experience on a catamaran, he's got a Katana 42. Because he didn't have the catamaran experience, they would only let him go to the Bahamas. They wouldn't let him go any farther south. So another friend had that same issue, but he didn't have that experience. So it kind of made more sense. But then I had a third friend in that same group with a Leopard with two claims in the last year, I think. He had dismasted once. No problem. He's down in the Dominican, so it doesn't make any sense. I don't understand. But insurance is a big deal. If you're looking to buy a boat, before you decide to buy a boat and make that offer, you check with insurance and see if you're going to be able to insure the thing, because that's something that snuck up on me, at least, and it causes everybody problems. The next one, inability to maintain systems. That's pretty obvious. I mean, you're out there and it's only you, so you got to be able to fix stuff. The one after that, places with sticky bottoms. This is a little bit of a joke, but like any place that has a VHF net is a place where you can go and just be real comfortable and kind of not leave. And so your journey will kind of end there. So Georgetown in Eleuthera, Marathon in Florida, St. Augustine, here where I am, Brunswick Landing, those kind of places where it's kind of a community and there's organized events, and that's kind of fun, but you can go there and you can get stuck. And if that wasn't what you're planning, then that might stop you. I put on here maybe work. I saw my two friends who were working while they were sailing, both owned companies, and so they just had to check in by phone and email. At Wardrick Wells, in the Exuma Park, there's not reception at all. You can go up this one hill to the top, and you can get 2 bars of 3G. So every day they would climb up that hill. I could see them up there, and it was very windy up there trying to make phone calls. So maybe you can work on the boat, and maybe not. That's kind of up in the air. And working on the boat means you're going to have a schedule, because you need to be some places. And the most dangerous thing on a cruising sailboat, at least, is a schedule, because the schedule will make you do stuff that's not safe. So, and I'm not the only one who says that, but I will copyright it. That picture right there is the Hopetown Abacos, Hopetown Light. That's still wound by hand and fired with kerosene. So it's one of the older lights. This is a really neat place. Okay, next slide. Thank you. Okay, so when I bought my boat, I had made offers on 2 other boats. They were both Jeanneau's. They were both Jeanneau's. But I ended up on my Tartan 34, and it was a little bit of kind of a gut decision, because it was just really comfortable when I was on it. I just knew that I knew where everything was. The Tartan 34, the C&C, there's a lot of these kind of Great Lakes sailing boats. that they're kind of all similar, and you walk onto one, and I mean, you kind of even know where all the stopcocks are. So anyway, so that's why I bought it. But I thought I'd put a slide about this versus a better option. So I have an analogy, and I like it, but I don't know if anybody else does. And it's about like the balls you use to play sports with. So you can play football with a tennis ball, but you can't play tennis with a football, right? So using a Tartan 34, which is a racer cruiser, to cruise the coast and the Bahamas, was using a tennis ball to play football with, right? You could do it, and I enjoyed it. But there could have been I could have picked something better actually for this sport. So on the right, I've got some cruising monohull. The reason the catamaran isn't in there is because I don't have catamaran kind of money, right? But I got to tell you, once you get into the Bahamas, it's all catamarans. They're, you know, you could kind of count the monohulls because now everybody's in a cat. It's that is the ball for that game. So just kind of go through this. The Tartan 34, it's a Great Lakes built racer cruiser, very familiar. It's got a 2-meter draft. It points great. You know, it's got 55 gallons of water and 23 gallons of fuel. I've got a 130 Genoa, and I'm also carrying a number 3 storm sail, or a number 3 jib. 23 gallons of fuel is more than enough. I've got a ASIM and a symmetrical. I only brought my ASIM for cruising. My symmetrical is in my locker. I've got a carbon pole. So, you know, decent boat. So a cruise, something that would probably play this sport better is a if you're going to stick with the monohull, would be a more full hull design, kind of with the skeg rudder. I've got that fin and that fin rudder, and it's not protected, and it's very nimble, but I kind of would like to have that weight to bust through waves better. Anyway, draft 5 foot or less. With that 2-meter keel, I really didn't have a whole lot of trouble, except for in the ICW in South Carolina and in the Abacos, especially Marsh Harbor. It was, you couldn't get in some places, but a lot of places I could get in. There are some places I probably shouldn't have got in. I was in Lee Stocking Island and the Exumas, and I went through a pass where I had 10 centimeters underneath my hull, and that was kind of iffy, but people talked me into it. Anyway, and it should upwind okay. We're going to probably talk about that a little bit later. Going upwind into waves is not a good time. Let's see, larger tanks and a water maker. Even if you have a water maker, you should have, because the water makers break, you should have some larger tanks. Genoa self-tacking staysail would be nice. Just having a staysail would be nice. It gives you a lot more options when it gets windy. A modern layout. You know, I have the classic layout with the 2 benches that look at each other, and storage. This boat doesn't have a lot of storage. I don't have a lot of stuff. That was kind of one of the goals. Works out. But if you were going to go and cruise, and it would be nice to have some extra storage. That picture up in the corner was taken by the Rigging Doctors. If you guys follow the Rigging Doctors on YouTube, I passed them and put my spinnaker up, and I think they took video. It's going to be on one of their episodes at some point. So, but they took that picture. It's a nice picture. All right. Next slide. Okay, the financial piece. Okay, I've got a disclaimer about the accuracy here. So what's on the left column there, that's what I wrote out as my budget in 2020 before I started. Um, so knowing nothing. Uh, then what's on the right is um, the costs spread evenly over the 28 months that I've been doing this. So some months there was a lot, and some months not so much, right? If I take my cash on hand when I started and my cash on hand now, and I subtract the two and I divide it by the 28 months, it's about $3,000 a month is what I've spent. But not all of that was sailing, because I went and visited my boys. I went to Texas a couple of times. I went up north and did the trans and the Huron Mac. So you know, so three grand a month would kind of be the top. So these numbers are probably close. Um, so if you kind of just go through, let me see what I spent on the boat. That's a lot for a dinghy and motor, and the reason that's a lot is because I lost my dinghy, and later my Honda 2.3 blew up on me. It went clang and spilled its oil all into the ocean, and that was in the exhumits, and yeah, seized up, dead. So I've had two dinghies and two motors, and that's why that is a lot of money for a dinghy and motor. Let's see. Just kind of going down the columns there. Slip fees. Initially, I was kind of fancy, and I stayed in marinas more than I probably should have. Until just recently, I stayed in a marina in Titusville this week, earlier this week, I think, or would have been last week. But before that, it had been January 15th when I was in Bimini. So marinas are expensive. It's nice to pull in there every once in a while, get the salt off your boat, and do things that you can only do at a marina, but not necessary. And so that's a good place to save money. With the utilities and the apartment rent, also I had a vehicle at one point. You know, I had those the first 6 months to a year, somewhere in there, and then sold those things off. Didn't have the apartment anymore after a year, so that went away. That was an expense I didn't think I was going to have to do, because I thought I was going to be able to live aboard, but then insurance said no. So there was that. Boaters and renters insurance, you know, not terrible, really. Split out over the year. Health insurance. I mean, this is the story in the United States, right? So I pay $500 and something a month for health insurance that doesn't do anything for me. I've got a high deductible. It's like $8,000. It's just for catastrophic events, but there it is. It's one of the highest things on this list, health insurance. Cellular, giving, still support the current. Repairs, that 10% of the purchase price every year, that's pretty good to budget with. Yeah, that's about right. Where it says food, that should really say food, drink, and miscellaneous, and also getting, like, when you're going to go to the grocery store, you get in your dinghy and you take your bags and you go to land, and maybe you have to pay a fee to land your dinghy, maybe. And then you walk to the grocery store, and then you get groceries, and then you got an Uber or taxi or something back, and then load up and blah, blah, blah. Everything takes a long time. But also there's extra cost in there for, doing a grocery run. So this food, drinks, and miscellaneous is that might be a little bit of a slush in there, but it's ballpark. I didn't spend anything on clothing, as you can see. Fuel, I didn't burn a lot of diesel at all. Last year, I think going from Miami to North Carolina, I burned 15 gallons of diesel because I had favorable winds. Um, I've burned more this year, but um, yeah, I sail a lot. So if you get the right winds, or you pick the right winds, uh, you don't have to spend a lot on fuel. It's really expensive too. I don't know if you noticed. Um, so, you know, now I need to get a job. There you go. Next slide, please. All right. This picture is nurse sharks in the exhibit. You can see how clear the water is. You get vertigo looking over the edge of your boat. You can see the water floor down 5 meters. You can see. Ocean going skills. So my advice is to skip ASA and do the RYA program instead. And that link will get you to the closest RYA to where you are, which is in Ontario, in the Thousand Islands area. The thing is that if you want to use your certification and go bareboat in Europe, or an operated boat in Europe, you need to get something called the International Certificate of Competence. And only way to get that is to have a certification from a government agency, and ASA does not count. So you're going to spend the same amount of money either way. I'm just suggesting do the RYA instead of the ASA. But here nor there. Now, somebody should remember to ask me at the end of this about the ASA certified captains that I have seen, and the stuff I've seen them do, or ask me. So the ASA is also, the quality differs. I think like the St. Augustine school is great. My guess is that it's not the same everywhere, just from what I've seen, what I've heard. Anyway, so ocean going skills, understanding tides and currents. If you've got navionics, it's easy. You can see how the tide and current is running. Can you do that in the Bahamas, where you only have 2 tidal gauges? Can you estimate current where you are? It's probably a good plan to be able to know how to do that. Making good decisions about inlets. This is something I'm still working on, because you get to an inlet and it's ebb tide, it's running out, and you got a little wind against it. You think, it's not that long, I can probably just power through, and you're just hopping on standing waves. It's really not good. And sometimes places like Cape Fear, the Cape Fear River runs 4 knots on ebb at least. If you're anywhere close to the mouth of it, you're getting flushed out. So just figuring out inlets and making good decisions about inlets. Waves. So this is one of those deals where, like, I think it's cool to be able to point my boat like 30 degrees off the true, if I could. But beating into 3-footers or even 2-footers will sometimes even stop the boat, depending on how close set they are. And you have to lay off, you have to foot a little bit so that you can get through the waves. And so pointing became not as important to me. Learning to drive the waves when they're at your aft quarter and they're trying to, you got the spinnaker full and they're trying to help the spinnaker round you up. There's some learning there, and it's taken me a while to figure that out. Just practice. I mean, you can think about it and kind of know what to do, but just practice has been important. Anchoring, there's a lot of advice on anchoring. I'm not going to give you much advice on anchoring except for have chain and some modern anchoring equipment. Rachnas or Mantis. Mantis is good because you can take that apart and store it flat. I don't have one. I have a Rachna 22 kilogram. No CQRs. No. You know, those somebody's dragging. That's what they have. It seems like. Just the modern anchors are expensive, but they're worth it. You can sleep at night. Weather, there's lots of apps to find your weather, but does your app work when you don't have cellular service? And do you know what the bias on the model is? So I find that Wind Finder, which I think I've got the NOAA model in my Wind Finder, but I find that in the Atlantic, if I look at what the gusts are on Wind Finder, that's kind of what the normal is going to be, and the gusts will be higher. You know, anyway, whatever app you have or whatever way you get weather, kind of know if you can get it offshore, how you're going to get it offshore, then kind of know the bias. You know, is it always call it high, is always call it low? That's my advice based on what I've done. So your mileage may vary. Next slide, please. What broke? Okay, so the guy who had this boat before, he raced it for I think 3 years, but he wouldn't let anybody use the head while they were racing. I think ever he didn't let anybody ever use the head. So when I got it, all the hoses in the head, they all had to be replaced. Like all the really bad thing to have to do is what I had to do first. So all the whole sanitation system had to be replaced. I had to cut stuff out and everything. One of the things I really liked that I did was an electrical upgrade. I put in 190 amp hour lithium battery I built myself following a YouTuber called Will Prowse, and charging system and all that kind of stuff. That's just been great, just awesome. I can monitor it on my phone. I can see where I am, and I can't say enough good stuff about that. Hoses last about 30 years. This boat was built in 1986. You can do the math. I had to replace all the hoses in the head. Like I said, I had to replace the fuel lines. I had to replace the packing gland. That's that picture, that big long picture at the bottom. You can kind of see where the shaft comes into the boat. There's a hose, kind of a real rigid hose, and then it goes to the coupling where the packing is. So that hose actually, when I was in the Keys, started leaking on me. And I had to get the boat pulled in Marathon, and my buddy and I backed the shaft off, replaced the thing, put the shaft back in, and got it as aligned as I can get it. So yeah, that was crazy. So hoses, 30 years. Mast headlight, cables for the shifter and throttle went out during the trip through Louisiana. And I did have a crew member at that time. And so I would yell down to her and say, forward, neutral, reverse, when we were docking. And so we got that fixed real quick because there was going to be a revolt if not. So chain plates, my starboard chain plate was leaking. When I was in North Carolina, when I took it off, it had some pitting. I took it into Pacific Seacraft, which is right there in Washington, North Carolina, and took it to the guy who does the chain plates, all the metal for Pacific Seacraft, and he tested it and looked at it and said, hey, this is great. Put it back in. Don't worry about it. Do this, this, this. And he was great. I love Pacific Seacraft. Those guys are awesome. Engine panel rotted out. My dinghy engine I already talked about. And then there was just minor maintenance stuff. Oh, my raw water pump for the diesel started leaking. Not the impeller side, the lip seal on the back of it started leaking. It was leaking about a quart of water every 4 hours, and it started leaking when I was in Florida right before I left. And so I got parts, I had to forward parts into the Bahamas to the Exumas, and I picked up parts in Georgetown. That rebuild kit's about $80, and then all the freight on it was about 60. So that was pretty expensive just to get the parts. But rebuilt the pump, it's doing great. Let's see some other pictures here. You can see there's a picture of a plastic shiv. That's the aft shiv in the boom for my reefing system for the second reef, and it just, you know, it shocked and exploded. So yeah, stuff breaks and then you got to fix it. I'm not going to say this is fun, but I kind of enjoy the puzzle part of it as long as I'm not in danger. So anyway, that's what broke, or some of the stuff. Next slide, please. Highlights. Dolphins are never boring. Off of Cape Canaveral, a friend of mine's wife was at the helm, and we were heading north, and we saw something orange in the water and thought that maybe it was a PFD or something. And so we went over to check it out, and it turns out it was 2 loggerhead turtles mating. So that's a highlight right there. I mean, those are endangered animals. Sharks, sharks, gates, and rays, lots of those, and especially when you get to the Bahamas. I've now seen 3 rocket launches from Cape Canaveral. Snorkeling is always amazing. It seems like both the Keys and the Bahamas. I really enjoyed snorkeling in the Keys, actually. So I've seen an aircraft carrier and a submarine with Pontus, though, not on my boat. Pontus and I saw that on a delivery we did. Cruisers you keep meeting. So like I said, it's a smaller community, not small, but smaller community. So you keep running into folks. So I met this couple on a boat, Spiridon, in Kimo when I bought my boat, and I took it we were on the same dock together. I have met them. They're in Texas. Then I met them in the Keys. Then I met them in Charleston. Then I met them in the Exumas. We just keep running into each other. So, and then you make tons of friends. Everybody knows you by your first name and your boat name. In my case with Sea Panda, they kind of just call me Sea Panda. So, yeah, that's fun. The vloggers we kind of talked about, and then Bahamas sailing conditions we kind of talked about. This picture to the right, that is Bahia Honda Key in the Keys, between Marathon and Key West, one of those keys. It's a state park, and there's that bridge that you see there has actually got a chunk cut out of it. That's the old bridge. You can sail in between that bridge and the new bridge and drop right there in between and right off the state park, and you can go in and use the state park. It's a great state park, good snorkeling. There's 3 knots of reversing current in there, but you know, good anchor, good anchoring practice, no problem. Never had a problem in there. Let's see. So last slide, please. Okay, so this is that's a little anchor crab in Hilton Head right there. And I am ready for questions.
All right, thanks, Mike. So if folks want to unmute and ask questions live, please feel free to do that. Go ahead and type questions in the chat if you prefer to do that, and we will read them off. But while we're waiting for people to type, I made a note. What were we supposed to ask you about the ASA certification? So I'll let you know that your audio did cut out some during the conversation, so you might get some questions that you think you already talked about.
Okay.
But tell us about that ASA certification.
Oh, I had a couple of friends, or I had a couple of friends who had some questions that they've got a piece of paper that says that they are certified by ASA to be offshore in a boat. I had one of them ask me after, okay, I got to back up and say that we found some rips in the front of his sail in the luff of his mainsail, and he couldn't get his mainsail all the way to the top. Well, when we were troubleshooting this, he said, "Oh, you got to release the main sheet," and we got a deer in the headlights look, and we had to track down where the main sheet was and release it, and then it went all the way up, and he said, well, his wife said, "I've never seen the sail look like that before," and he says, "Do all sailboats have main sheets?" And yes. So that's why I'm saying, and I had another friend who went to drops anchor. He's also got a piece of paper that says he's certified as offshore 103 or whatever it is that they have. He went to drop anchor. He drops his anchor and to the bottom. It's got about 30 feet out, puts his bridle on, and then drops about, I don't know, 70 feet of chain on the boat side of the bridle. And we're looking and said, I don't think that looks right. So, yeah, I'm collecting these stories. And we all do stupid stuff, but I mean, they gotta teach that. Come on. So, and I also know, I also had a person on the boat a couple of days ago. I had a student from the St. Augustine State Sailing School, and she docked this boat in heavy current in both St. Augustine and Jacksonville, and perfect. So I know that it can also be good. So I just think it might be inconsistent. I don't know. I've got an N of 3 there. So anyway, are there any questions?
Yep, absolutely. So so Barb asked, maybe I missed this, but how did you come to name your boat Sea Panda? What's the meaning?
Okay, that's a good one. So I did a charter in Florida, and it was my first charter, and I had some friends from Minneapolis down there, and we went out. We're sitting at anchor one night, and my friend Andrew, he really wanted to see a manatee. That was his goal, because he really likes manatees. And then he kind of was going off on how people don't give him as much respect as what they need. And he doesn't like it that they are called sea cows, because he thinks it's degrading. There should be named an animal that is like people like, that is respected, like something everyone likes, like panda, like a sea panda. And I laughed and I said, all right, if I ever buy a boat, I'm going to call it Sea Panda. So, yeah.
I love it.
That's it.
All right. So Joel asked, what is the worst weather you have seen?
Oh, I seen or been in. I'm going to go with been in, because I was at anchor during a tropical storm, or I was on a mooring ball during a tropical storm in Fort Myers. That was pretty bad, because when I looked out the window, my dinghy was flying next to the boat. I need to go tie that up a little better. Yeah, but the worst I've been in, and this is me being stupid, is I went from Charleston to Brunswick, and it looked like it was going to be 20 knots, but it's going to be from behind, like a run. And then it looked like it was going to get lighter. So, well, you know, you get out there, it's a run, and I'll go 5 knots, 6 knots, or whatever. The apparent will be 15, 14, something like that. That'll be okay. And it was the first day. By the second day, oh, also, this was a multi-day offshore, which that's something I've done that's stupid. But by the second day, the waves had built to 6+, and I had nothing up, and I was running downwind with bare poles, and I was doing hull speed, which is 7 knots for this boat. And I said, well, I could do this for another 4 hours. Oh, and solo, by the way. Most all of this has been solo. So running downwind, and I'm like, I could probably do this another 4 hours to Brunswick. But then I remembered that Brunswick, the channel turns up to the northwest, so I was going to have to beat into this. Even with bare poles, it was going to be awful. So I went into a badly marked channel that I'd used before at Sapelo Island and got out. The people in front of me, who, when they passed me, had too much sail up on the first day. The people in front of me had chosen the north entrance to Sapelo, which has a jetty to the south of it, and they ended up on the rocks and capsizing. They lived, but they lost their boat. So I chose the south entrance, which has a jetty to the north. It's a destroyed jetty, but it's partially there, works a little bit. And then I got in and took the ICW from there. But yeah, that was dumb. And yeah, that 20 knots became 25, gusting to 30+. And when you're going hull speed without any sails up, that's pretty scary. Really stupid. So there you go. I'd say that's worse.
All right. And Sully says, thanks for sharing, Mike. I've spent hours on the Delos, La Vega, and Sailing Doodles channels and have this dream too one day. Fun to hear about it firsthand. Well, not a question, but then Barb asked, what was your life career? For you sure have a wide variety of applicable skills to living aboard a boat.
So what am I going to do next, or what is?
No, I think what did you do before that gave you all of these skills?
Oh, I was a project manager, and at the end, I was a project manager in operations, or I was in charge of continuous improvement at Cargill for their grain operations worldwide. So I had a lot of operations skills and kind of that efficiency, Lean Six Sigma mindset. So yeah,
Gotcha.
I like to fix things. That's what makes me happy.
It seems like that's required if you're going to go out messing about on boats.
Especially solo. Yeah. Yeah.
Yes. All right. So Katie asked, how did you find out or learn how to fix your boat? Were you an engineer? Ask other people? Google, YouTube, how to do it, etc.
YouTube does a lot. Then I also have some friends like on other boats who know how to do some things. Changing that packing gland, I needed my friend who's the actual mechanic, his help, and he showed me how to do that stuff. You make friends, and people have different skills, and you borrow from each other. And you know, everybody's always excited to go and help somebody else with a problem. So yeah, it's kind of a bit of the community. Absolutely the YouTube, but the YouTube plus like some other folks and their opinions and their experience.
Great, thank you. And then Joel asked, do you find it difficult to dock in a marina single-handed?
Docking is always a bit of a pucker. Yeah. You just got to have a good plan, and then I'm always thinking about what's my escape. right? So I'm going to do
Mhm.
this, and what's my escape? Or I'm going to go in this place where it looks a little bit narrow and it might be shallow. Which way am I going to turn if it gets too shallow, right? That kind of stuff. I'm always
Mhm.
trying to figure out as a single hander, what's my plan? Is everything set up ahead of time? And then what's my escape? So I came into here today in Brunswick. I knew that since the current was coming in and it's a dead end at the end of this, it's kind of a, yeah, it's a dead end. So as the
Mhm.
current's coming in, it's going to push you to the sides. Um, I was going to come in and I wanted to back in. I knew I needed to take it pretty close because the current was going to push me away from the finger in my slip. Everything, I had all my lines there. There was a guy catching my lines, which was great. Not always the case. Yeah, and I rubbed the dock a little bit because I took it a little too close, but it'll buff out. It's gonna be all right. So sometimes you hit.
Great, thank you. And then Sully asked, what are some things or gear you thought you needed but never ended up using or decided it wasn't needed?
Oh, I watched that. Was it Delos? I think it was Delos that went with induction cooking, and I did that. I took gas. I took my gas stove out and I put an induction hot plate in, whatever. That's a terrible idea. That just uses way too much battery.
Mm.
So I stopped doing that. Gear that I thought I needed, but then I didn't. The induction cooking. Um, hmm, hmm. I'm just looking around now. Uh, yeah. My spinnaker pole. I That carbon fiber spinnaker pole has been on the boat the whole time. I've used it like 3 times. Probably didn't need to haul that around. Um, and I used it to jibe, or to not jibe. I used it to pull out the jib like
Mhm.
3 times. Uh, Stuff I didn't need. Hmm. Gosh, that's a good one. I'm sure in my tool bag you could just look at the rusty stuff. Anything that's got a lot of rust on it, I probably didn't need that. There you go.
Fair enough.
Hmm.
All right. And Sheila asked, what was the most notable learning you had going from a lake sailor to a Gulf Ocean sailor?
Uh, Waves. You look at the wind and you go, oh, this is going to be nice. This is a nice downwind. It's going to be great. It's like 15 knots off of my back quarter. It's perfect conditions. I'll go out and sail this. And then miss that like, it's been raging for the last couple of 3 days and the waves are still high. So now you're going
Mm.
to go out there and yeah, it's the waves are going to hit the back of your boat and move the back of the boat, and try to make you round up. So just paying attention to waves, I think, is they really do a lot. They can really make it uncomfortable, and that's for
Yeah.
catamarans. It's double that because that could be really bad for them. They get the waves slap the bottom of it. They can
Mhm.
bury the pontoons in a wave, and it twists the boat. My buddy was in such bad waves. He said that it broke the glass on his microwave, like because it twisted the frame and shattered the glass in the microwave. His, the
Wow.
whole boat was twisting because the waves were so bad. So waves, that's my answer.
Okay. All right. And Smolker was asked, do you have solar panels, wind generator, regen on prop, or do you just recharge with engine or shore power?
I just have solar panels. I have 200 watts of solar, um, and I have a Renogy charger that they make for the van life people, where the Renogy charger takes from the alternators and from the solar panels. So the solar panels charge the house battery, the lithium, first until the lithium gets topped up. And then that charger will go back and charge the starter battery, which is flooded, just the conventional lead acid for me. So it'll go, it'll charge my house, then it'll charge that, the starter. When I'm running the motor, the alternator will charge the starting battery first. When it gets charged up, it'll bleed over and charge the lithiums. So that charger is, that's an important part of it, right? So chargers are good, that's a great charger. It's about 300 bucks, I think. Panels are not as expensive anymore. I built my own battery for about $700 back in 2020, and nowadays you can get, well, you can get a 100 amp hour lithium battery for 500 and something, you know, from the factory. So you could probably get a 200 amp hour one for pretty close, maybe even less than what I paid to build my own in 2020. You can buy one now. If you do that, check the BMS on those cheaper lithium batteries doesn't have low temperature protection on it. And if you try to charge your lithium batteries with when it's too cold, you will destroy them. So you can add low temperature protection, or sometimes it's in your charger. Or your charger can have a low temperature shut off. So watch out for low temperature protection, but those cheap batteries are actually pretty good. You watch Will Prowse tear them apart on YouTube and show you what's inside.
So. All right, great, thanks. And Jim asked, what surprised you the most about this experience?
I'm going to steal my buddy Eddie's line, and he said the thing that surprised him the most was that you could just anchor wherever you want. Like he used to study the maps and see where the anchor sites, and he was just going to anchor here or anchor there, or this anchorage, because there's a little green plot thing on Navionics that says there's an anchorage there. No, you can drop wherever you want. So that was his. For me, the thing that was just like because you sail in all kinds of conditions, when the conditions are absolutely perfect, like when I crossed the Bahama Banks from Bimini to Chubut, it was perfect sailing conditions. Just how happy that makes you, you know, because it's just perfect sailing conditions. The boat is just in the groove, you know, it's consistent, and yeah, it's fun. It's got enough variation that makes it interesting that you don't want to just, that you hand steer because it's fun. Yeah, that's for me. I was surprised about how much I enjoyed that. So.
Great. All right, so Pete says, good job, Mike. It's great to hear about your adventures and how you manage adversity. And I think that's all the questions that are in the chat, unless I missed any. But if anyone wants to unmute and ask any live questions, you can feel free to do that. Otherwise, if there aren't any other questions, then I'm going to ask Barb to jump in to close this out.
That was a good bedtime story, Mike. Great presentation. I like that. I think that as we all sit here in Minnesota with cold rain outside and warnings of tornadoes, we'd rather be in your shoes, or rather your boat. But it's impressive to hear that with only dipping your toes into sailing 2014 at WIC, that it's led you to the fulfillment of such a lifelong dream. I bully for you on that. So thank you. Thank you. I think a couple things we want to mention from here, because this is our last winter wanderlust, and you know, hopefully there's some more stories and adventures percolating out there that some of you will consider joining us next season. But now we're on to sailing and seeing each other in person, and that's all good. As you see on the screen, we've got our final winter happy hour too, and that's at Baja House in Wayzata. So come and join us there. And the nice thing is that's at 5, and following that at 7, don't miss, just walk on down or drive on over to Wayzata Yacht Club, because we have our first in-person gathering with Kevin Kenny and Bruce Martinson, going through the 3-boat zone and proper course, and you'll get to see sailors. So that's all good. Spend the whole night out in Wayzata. And then next from there to put on your calendar, the website right now is a little wonky on, we're having some issues with Sports Engine, so don't be worried about those times on there. We're trying to get them fixed. But we have our new member meet and greet, and that's, so save the date for April 28th, and that's for boat owners to connect with new crew to learn about the club and all the fun we have. And so you'll see more information coming out about that through all the usual channels. So there's that. And then, you know, if you like to be involved and help volunteer and be with fun people, you're welcome to join our membership committee. Thank you to Jolene and Sheila for spearheading the Wanderlust series once again this season. And we've got lots that we're doing to help the members get their questions answered, and also reach out to the community at large, bring more sailors in. That's a good thing. So that's all from me. And thank you everyone for coming.
Thank you, Barb. We do have one question, and I'm not sure if we can answer this. We do have a question about when new members will get their car stickers for parking.
Yes, that has come up a lot. We have a lot of questions coming in about that. We're just waiting for the bulk of the new crew memberships to come in, and the boat owners and the payments and everything. And then we'll send out information on how to get those. It'll be before the first race, so we'll get that to everyone.
Thank you.
Thanks, guys.
All right. Well, I think one last question, Mike. Sully asked if you have a blog or a YouTube page that people could follow.
I do not. The best you could do is follow me on Facebook, I guess. So, yeah, I try to post everything on Facebook, so my mom knows where I am. Friend me.
A good son. All right. Well, thank you all so much for joining us tonight. We're glad you could be here, and thank you, Mike, for a great presentation and not being afraid to share, you know, some of the trials and tribulations, because that really is a part of being a sailor, I think, and being able to figure that stuff out. So appreciate your joining us. Absolutely. And we'll hopefully see the rest of you on the water in the not too distant future. Have a good night, everyone.